What would you do if you discovered that a single piece of paper could expose the darkest secrets of the most powerful family in the world, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning in London? Royal Protection Officer James Mitchell was conducting his routine security sweep of the royal convoy when his trained eye caught something that made his blood run cold. A small crumpled note pressed against the inside of Prince Louis's car window, barely visible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. But James was always looking. The note contained just 7 words that would shatter everything he thought he knew about the royal family. They're planning to hurt him tonight. Help. In the next few seconds, James would make a decision that would either save a young prince's life or destroy his own career forever. He had no way of knowing that this moment would uncover a conspiracy so deep and dangerous that it reached the very heart of the British monarchy itself. What started as a routine morning drive to school was about to become the most terrifying day in Prince Louis's young life, and the beginning of a deadly game where trust is a luxury no one can afford, and the people sworn to protect you might be the very ones planning your destruction. This is the true story of how one guard's quick thinking and unshakable loyalty saved a royal life and exposed a web of betrayal that went all the way to the top. James Mitchell had been a Royal Protection Officer for 12 years, and in all that time, he had never felt his heart pound the way it did on that Tuesday morning in October. The autumn air was crisp as he conducted his final security check of the royal convoy outside Kensington Palace. Prince Louis, now 8 years old, was scheduled for his usual drive to Lanbrook School, and James took his responsibility for the young prince's safety more seriously than anything else in his life. As he walked around the sleek black Range Rover, checking for any signs of tampering or suspicious objects, something caught his eye. There, pressed against the inside of the rear passenger window where Prince Louis would sit, was a small piece of paper. It was barely visible, tucked into the corner where the window met the door frame, but James's trained eye had spotted it immediately. His first instinct was to assume it was just a piece of rubbish that had somehow gotten into the vehicle. Perhaps Louis had been playing with paper during yesterday's journey and had accidentally dropped it, but as James moved closer to get a better look, his blood turned to ice. The paper wasn't random debris. It had writing on it, and it was positioned deliberately where only someone looking carefully would notice it. Without hesitating, James pulled out his radio to contact his supervisor, but then he stopped. Something told him to be careful about who he trusted with this information. Instead, he quickly but carefully opened the car door and retrieved the note, making sure no one was watching him. The message was written in a child's handwriting, shaky and desperate. "They're planning to hurt him tonight. Help. I heard them talking. Please don't let them know I told you. Save him." James felt his world tilt on its axis. His mind raced as he tried to process what he was reading. Who was they? Who had written this note? And most importantly, was Prince Louis in immediate danger? He looked around the courtyard of Kensington Palace, studying the faces of the other security personnel, palace staff, and drivers who were preparing for the morning's departure. These were people he had worked with for years, people he trusted with his life and the lives of the royal family. But now, one of them, or several of them, might be planning to harm an innocent child. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Chen, head of Royal Security Operations, approached the convoy for her morning briefing. James had always respected Sarah's dedication and professionalism, but now he found himself wondering if he could trust even her. The note had said, "they," which suggested multiple people were involved.
How deep did this conspiracy go?
"Everything ready for departure, Mitchell?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying its usual authoritative tone. James folded the note quickly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Yes, ma'am. All clear." He managed to keep his voice steady, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. Prince Louis emerged from the palace with his nanny, Mrs. Henderson, chatting excitedly about a science project he was working on at school. The boy's innocent smile and carefree demeanor made James's stomach clench with protective fury. How could anyone want to hurt this child? As they helped Louis into the vehicle, James studied Mrs. Henderson's face carefully. She had been with the family for 3 years and had always seemed devoted to the children, but the note suggested that someone close to the prince was involved. Could it be her? The thought made James feel sick, but he couldn't ignore the possibility. "Mr. Mitchell, will you be riding with us today?" Prince Louis asked, his bright blue eyes looking up at James with complete trust. "Yes, Your Highness, I'll be right here beside you," James replied, his voice gentle despite the turmoil in his mind. He made a silent promise to himself that he would not let anything happen to this child, no matter what it cost him. As the convoy began to move through the gates of Kensington Palace, James's phone buzzed with a text message. The number was unknown, and the message was brief. "You found it. Meet me at the old oak tree in Hyde Park at 3 p.m. Come alone. Trust no one else. James deleted the message immediately and looked around the vehicle. Mrs. J. Henderson was helping Louis with his seatbelt. The driver, Robert Davies, was focused on navigating through London traffic. The second security vehicle followed closely behind them. Everyone seemed normal, but James now questioned everything. Who had sent the text? Was it the person who had written the note? And more importantly, was this person truly trying to help Prince Louis, or was this all part of an elaborate trap? As they drove through the busy London streets, James found himself analyzing every person they passed, every vehicle that came too close, every turn that deviated from their usual route. His training had taught him to be observant, but now his senses were heightened to an almost painful degree. Prince Louis chatted happily about his upcoming school play, completely unaware that his life might be in danger. James listened with half his attention while the other half remained focused on potential threats. Every red light seemed to last too long. Every pedestrian crossing in front of them could be a potential assassin. When they arrived at Lambrook School, James conducted the most thorough security sweep of his career. He checked every classroom Louis would enter, every corridor he would walk down, every exit and entrance to the building. The headmaster, Mr. Thornton, seemed surprised by the extra precautions. "Is there something we should be aware of, Officer Mitchell?" Mr. Thornton asked, his brow furrowed with concern. James couldn't risk telling him about the note, not when he didn't know who to trust. "Just routine enhanced security measures, sir. Nothing to worry about." But everything was something to worry about now. As James watched Prince Louis disappear into his classroom, surrounded by other children and teachers, who all seemed innocent enough, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. The text message had mentioned a meeting at 3 p.m., but that was hours away. In the meantime, James had to figure out how to keep Louis safe without alerting the potential conspirators that their plan had been discovered. He spent the morning discreetly investigating the palace staff who had access to the royal vehicles. Using his security clearance, he reviewed personnel files, looking for anything unusual or suspicious. Everyone seemed clean on paper, but James knew that the most dangerous threats often came from those who appeared most trustworthy. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He's not safe at school either. They have people everywhere. Watch for the substitute teacher in the blue cardigan. James's blood ran cold. He immediately contacted the school's main office, claiming he needed to conduct an additional security check. When he arrived back at Lambrook, he went straight to Lewis's classroom. There, standing at the front of the room, reading to the children, was a woman in a blue cardigan that James had never seen before. She wasn't Louis's regular teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who was apparently out sick that day. The substitute teacher looked up as James entered the room, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, fear, or perhaps recognition. It was so brief that James might have imagined it, but his instincts told him otherwise. "Officer Mitchell," Prince Louis called out happily. "Miss Roberts is reading us a story about knights and dragons." Miss Roberts smiled, but James noticed that her hands were trembling slightly as she held the book. "How nice to see you again, Officer Mitchell," she said, though James was certain they had never met before. "Again?" James asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Oh, I just meant—" "I've seen you around the school before," she replied quickly, but her face had gone pale. James knew he had to act fast, but he also had to be careful not to create a scene that might endanger Louis or the other children. He moved closer to the front of the room, positioning himself between Miss Roberts and Prince Louis. "I need to speak with Prince Louis privately," James announced. "Royal family business." As Louis came toward him, James noticed Miss Roberts reaching into her cardigan pocket. His training kicked in, and he moved with lightning speed, grabbing her wrist before she could pull out whatever she was reaching for. "Children, please line up at the door," James called out calmly, though his grip on Miss Roberts was firm. "We're going to take a little walk to the main office." The woman's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. "You don't understand," she whispered urgently. "I'm not the one you should be worried about. I was trying to warn you. The real threat is much closer than you think." James felt his confidence waver. Was this woman truly part of the conspiracy? Or was she another person trying to protect Prince Louis? In this deadly game of shadows and deception, distinguishing friend from foe was becoming increasingly difficult. As he escorted the children out of the classroom, keeping Prince Louis close to his side, James realized that this was only the beginning. The day had started with a mysterious note, and now he was uncovering layer after layer of a conspiracy that seemed to involve people at every level of the prince's life. The most terrifying part was that he still didn't know who was behind it all or exactly when they planned to strike. All he knew was that somewhere in the web of people sworn to protect Prince Louis, there were those who wanted to harm him. Time was running out, and James was going to have to make some very dangerous decisions about who to trust and how far he was willing to go to keep an innocent child safe. The school's main office buzzed with tension as James escorted Miss Roberts inside, keeping Prince Louis safely behind him. Headmaster Thornton looked up from his desk with confusion and growing alarm as he took in the scene before him. "Officer Mitchell, what's going on here?" Thornton asked, rising from his chair. James needed to think fast. He couldn't reveal the full extent of what he suspected without potentially putting more people at risk, but he also couldn't ignore the danger that seemed to be closing in around Prince Louis from all sides. "I need to verify Miss Roberts' credentials," James said carefully. "There seems to be some confusion about her authorization to work with Prince Louis." Miss Roberts, whose real name James was beginning to doubt, looked directly at him with desperate eyes. "Please, you have to listen to me. I work for MI5. I've been undercover trying to infiltrate the group that's planning to harm the prince. The note you found this morning, I wrote it." The revelation hit James like a physical blow. MI5? If this woman was telling the truth, then the conspiracy was far bigger than he had imagined. It also meant that the Royal Protection Unit had been kept in the dark about a serious threat to their charge. "Prove it," James demanded, though he kept his voice low to avoid alarming Prince Louis, who was looking between the adults with growing confusion. Miss Roberts carefully reached into her jacket and pulled out a small identification card. James examined it closely. It looked authentic, but these days forgeries could be sophisticated enough to fool experts. The ID identified her as Agent Sarah Blackwood, assigned to a classified Royal Protection detail. "If you're really MI5, why wasn't I informed about this operation?" James asked. "Because we weren't sure how deep the conspiracy goes within the Royal Protection Unit," Agent Blackwood replied. "Our investigation suggests that someone very close to the royal family is coordinating with outside threats. We've been trying to identify the mole for months." Prince Louis tugged on James's jacket. "Mr. Mitchell, are we in trouble?" "I didn't do anything wrong, did I?" James knelt down to the boy's level, forcing a reassuring smile. "No, Your Highness. You haven't done anything wrong at all. We're just making sure everything is safe and sound." But even as he comforted the child, James's mind was racing. If Blackwood was telling the truth, it meant that someone he worked with every day, someone he trusted with his life, was planning to betray not just him, but an innocent child. The thought made his stomach turn with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "What exactly do you know about the threat?" James asked Blackwood quietly. "There's going to be an attempt on his life tonight," she whispered, glancing nervously at Prince Louis. "They're planning to make it look like an accident during the evening transport back to Kensington Palace. The route has been compromised, and they have people positioned at strategic points along the way." James felt his blood run cold. The evening transport was routine. Prince Louis often stayed late at school for various activities and was driven back after dinner. If the conspirators had planned something for that journey, it meant they had detailed knowledge of the royal family's private schedule. "Who else knows about this?" James demanded. "That's the problem," Blackwood said. "We're not sure. Our intelligence suggests that the leak is coming from someone with high-level access to royal family movements, someone who would know about schedule changes, route modifications, and security protocols." The implications were staggering. James thought about his colleagues, people he had worked alongside for years. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Chen, who had coordinated security for the royal family for over a decade. Robert Davies, the trusted driver who had been ferrying royal family members safely for 8 years. Even Mrs. Deadly. Henderson, the nanny who seemed to genuinely care for Prince Louis's well-being. "I need to contact my supervisor," James said, but Blackwood grabbed his arm. "No, that's exactly what you can't do. We don't know who the mole is, and if you report this through normal channels, you might be handing Prince Louis directly to his would-be killers." James stared at her, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. His training told him to follow protocol, to report threats through proper channels, and trust the system that had protected the royal family for generations. But his instincts told him that Blackwood might be right, that following protocol could be exactly the wrong thing to do. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked. "We need to get Prince Louis somewhere safe, somewhere that isn't part of his normal routine, somewhere the conspirators won't expect him to be." Headmaster Thornton, who had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm, finally spoke up. "I think you need to explain to me what's going on here. Are you telling me that Prince Louis is in immediate danger?" James looked at the headmaster, trying to evaluate whether he could trust this man with the truth. Thornton had been at Lambrook School for 15 years and had always seemed genuinely concerned about the well-being of all his students, especially the royal children. But then again, the perfect cover for a conspirator would be a position of trust and authority. "Sir, I need to ask you to keep this absolutely confidential," James said finally. "There may be a credible threat against Prince Louis, and we're taking extra precautions." "Of course," Thornton replied immediately. "Whatever you need. The school's security office has a safe room that was installed specifically for situations like this. Prince Louis could stay there while you sort this out." Blackwood nodded approvingly. "That might work, at least temporarily, but we need to figure out how to get him somewhere truly secure for the night." As they discussed options, James's phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. "You're running out of time. The plan has been moved up. They know you found the note." James showed the message to Blackwood, and her face went white. "This is bad. If they know their security has been compromised, they might try to accelerate their timeline." "Who's sending these messages?" James asked. "I don't know," Blackwood admitted. "We have another operative working this case, but we've been operating under strict radio silence to avoid detection. It could be them, or it could be someone else entirely." The uncertainty was maddening. James was used to having clear intelligence, reliable communication, and established protocols to follow. This situation was like trying to navigate through fog while being hunted by an unseen enemy. Prince Louis, who had been remarkably patient during this adult conversation, finally spoke up. "I'm hungry. When can we have lunch?" The innocent request brought James back to the reality of his situation. This wasn't just about catching conspirators or solving a mystery. It was about protecting a child who just wanted to eat lunch and go about his normal day. "Let's get you to the safe room first, Your Highness," James said gently. "We can arrange for lunch to be brought to you there." As they made their way through the school corridors, James found himself studying every face they passed. Teachers, students, custodial staff, parent volunteers, any one of them could be connected to the threat against Prince Louis. The paranoia was exhausting, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down. The safe room was a small but comfortable space designed to look like a regular classroom while providing enhanced security features. Once Prince Louis was settled inside with some books and games, James and Blackwood stepped into the adjacent monitoring room to continue their discussion. "I've been thinking about the timing," Blackwood said. "The fact that they moved up their plan suggests they know exactly who found the note and when. That level of surveillance points to someone with access to internal communications." James nodded grimly, "Which means they probably know about this conversation too, if they have someone monitoring security communications." "Not necessarily," Blackwood replied. "MI5 has been monitoring various communication channels, and we've noticed some unusual activity on the Royal Protection frequency. But there are ways to communicate that they can't intercept." She pulled out what looked like an ordinary smartphone but had several additional components attached to it. "Encrypted communication device. If we need to coordinate with outside resources, this is the only safe way to do it." James was impressed despite his anxiety. If Blackwood really was MI5, then at least Prince Louis had some professional backup beyond just James himself. But the nagging doubt remained. What if this was all an elaborate setup? What if Blackwood was actually part of the conspiracy and he was playing directly into their hands? His phone rang, showing Detective Chief Inspector Chen's number. James hesitated before answering, acutely aware that this could be a test of whether he had discovered the threat. "Mitchell here," he answered, trying to sound normal. "James, where are you? You missed the noon check-in." Chen's voice sounded concerned, but not suspicious. "Still at the school, ma'am. Prince Louis had a small issue with his lunch, so I stayed to make sure everything was sorted out." "Is everything all right? Do you need backup?" The question seemed innocent enough, but James found himself analyzing Chen's tone for any hint of hidden meaning. Was she genuinely concerned about his welfare? Or was she trying to determine if the conspiracy had been exposed? "No, ma'am. Everything's under control. Should be back on schedule within the hour." "Good. I'll see you at the evening briefing." "Oh, and James, there's been a slight change to tonight's route back to Kensington. I'll fill you in on the details later." James felt his heart skip a beat. A route change for tonight's transport. Exactly what Blackwood had warned him about. After he hung up, he looked at the MI5 agent with new understanding. "They just confirmed what you told me," he said. "Chen mentioned a route change for tonight." Blackwood nodded grimly. "That's likely where they're planning to strike." A route change would give them the perfect opportunity to position assets without arousing suspicion about why security personnel are in unusual locations. "So what's our next move?" James asked. "We need to get Prince Louis out of the normal transport cycle entirely, but we also need to do it in a way that doesn't alert the conspirators that we know about their plan." James thought for a moment. "What if we created a medical emergency? Something that would require Prince Louis to be taken directly to a hospital instead of back to the palace." "That could work," Blackwood agreed, "but it would have to be convincing, and we'd need to make sure the hospital we choose is secure." As they worked out the details of their plan, James couldn't help but wonder how many other threats like this one had been prevented without the public ever knowing. The royal family lived their lives in what appeared to be elegant normalcy, but beneath the surface, there was apparently a constant war being fought to keep them safe. The most disturbing part was that this threat seemed to be coming from within. Someone who had sworn to protect Prince Louis was instead planning to harm him. The betrayal was almost harder to comprehend than the danger itself. Looking through the one-way glass at Prince Louis, who was contentedly reading a book about dragons, James made a silent promise. Whatever it took, wherever this conspiracy led, he would make sure this child made it home safely to his family tonight. The plan James and Agent Blackwood devised was risky, but necessary. They would stage a convincing medical emergency that would require Prince Louis to be transported directly to a secure location, rather than following his normal evening routine. But first, they needed to identify exactly who within the Royal Protection Unit was working against them. "I have an idea," Blackwood said, adjusting her encrypted communication device. "We're going to feed different pieces of false information to different members of your team and see which one gets back to the conspirators." James nodded, understanding the strategy immediately.
A canary trap.
"If we can figure out who the mole is, we can work around them." "Exactly. But we need to be careful. If they realize what we're doing, they might accelerate their timeline even further, or worse, they might try to eliminate Prince Louis right here at the school." The thought sent a chill down James's spine. He looked through the observation window at Prince Louis, who was now drawing pictures of knights and castles, completely unaware that his life hung in the balance. James pulled out his secure phone and began making carefully crafted calls to different members of his team. To Detective Chief Inspector Chen, he mentioned that Prince Louis would be staying late for an additional tutoring session and wouldn't be leaving until 7 p.m. To driver Robert Davies, he said the prince would be leaving early due to a family dinner and would need transport at 4 p.m. To Security Coordinator Williams, he reported that the prince might be spending the night at the school due to a special astronomy program. Each piece of information was designed to sound plausible while being completely false. More importantly, each piece would require different positioning and timing if someone was planning an attack on Prince Louis's transport. "Now we wait," Blackwood said after James finished his calls. "If any of those scenarios start showing up in our intelligence intercepts, we'll know who we can't trust." While they waited for results, James found himself thinking about the people he had just potentially betrayed. These were colleagues he had worked with for years, people who had risked their own lives to protect the royal family. The idea that one of them could be working with those who wanted to harm Prince Louis was almost incomprehensible. His phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. "Again, the woman with you isn't who she says she is. Check her credentials more carefully. The real MI5 agent was found dead this morning." James felt the blood drain from his face as he read the message. He looked at Blackwood, who was monitoring her encrypted device, and suddenly questioned everything she had told him. Was she really Agent Sarah Blackwood from MI5, or was she part of an elaborate deception designed to get him to lower his guard? "I need to verify your identity again," James said quietly, his hand moving instinctively towards his weapon. Blackwood looked up from her device with surprise. "What's wrong?" "I just received information suggesting that the real MI5 agent on this case was found dead this morning." For a moment, Blackwood's face showed genuine shock and fear. "That's impossible. I spoke with my handler just 2 hours ago." "Call them now," James demanded. "Use that encrypted device and confirm your status." Blackwood nodded and began working with her device, but James noticed that her hands were shaking slightly. Whether from fear or nervousness, he couldn't tell. While she made her call, James stepped into the hallway and contacted MI5 directly, using his own secure channels. The conversation was brief but illuminating. MI5 confirmed that Agent Sarah Blackwood was indeed one of their operatives, but they also confirmed that another agent working on royal protection had been found dead that morning in what appeared to be a professional assassination. "Agent Blackwood is legitimate," the MI5 contact confirmed. "But Agent Thompson, who was our primary operative on this case, was killed early this morning. We believe his cover was blown and he was eliminated to prevent him from exposing the conspiracy. James felt a mixture of relief and horror. Relief that Blackwood was who she claimed to be, and horror that the conspirators were willing to commit murder to protect their plans. This was far more serious than he had initially realized. When he returned to the monitoring room, Blackwood was finishing her call. "My handler confirms that Agent Thompson was found dead this morning," she said grimly. "It appears that whoever we're dealing with, they're not hesitating to eliminate threats to their operation. Which means we're both in danger now too," James realized. "Very likely, but more importantly, it means Prince Louis is in even greater danger than we thought. If they're willing to kill a trained MI5 agent, they won't hesitate to harm a child." James's phone rang again. This time it was Chen calling back. "Mitchell, there's been a development. We've received intelligence about a possible threat to Prince Louis tonight. I'm ordering an immediate security upgrade and route change." The irony wasn't lost on James. Chen was calling to warn him about the very threat they were already trying to neutralize, but he couldn't be sure whether her warning was genuine or whether she was the mole trying to manipulate him into following a predetermined plan.
What kind of threat, ma'am? James asked carefully.
"Possible attempt during evening transport. We're implementing Protocol 7 immediately. You need to get Prince Louis to the designated safe house within the hour." Protocol 7 was the highest level of threat response short of complete lockdown. It involved moving the protected individual to a secure location while a full threat assessment was conducted. But James realized that following Protocol 7 would mean turning Prince Louis over to the very system that might be compromised. "I understand, ma'am. We'll begin preparations immediately." After he hung up, Blackwood looked at him questioningly. "What did you tell her?" "That we'd follow Protocol 7. But we're not actually going to do that." "Good. Because Protocol 7 would put Prince Louis directly into the hands of whoever is coordinating this conspiracy." James made a decision that went against everything in his training. Instead of following the established security protocols that had kept the royal family safe for generations, he was going to trust his instincts and work with an MI5 agent to protect Prince Louis outside the normal chain of command. "I need to create a diversion," James said. "Something that will make it impossible for Prince Louis to be transported through normal channels tonight." "What kind of diversion?" "A real medical emergency. Not a fake one." James paused, the weight of what he was about to suggest settling on his shoulders. "I'm going to have to injure myself. Make it look like there was an attack on the security detail that requires Prince Louis to be taken into protective custody by outside authorities." Blackwood stared at him. "That's incredibly dangerous. If you're wrong about who to trust, you could be handing Prince Louis over to the very people who want to harm him. And if I'm right, it might be the only way to save his life." Before Blackwood could respond, James's encrypted phone buzzed with the results of their canary trap. The false information about Prince Louis staying late for tutoring had somehow made its way to an external communication intercept. The source was traced back to Detective Chief Inspector Chen's secure phone. "Chen is the mole," James said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "She's been feeding information to the conspirators." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Sarah Chen had been his supervisor for 4 years. She had recommended him for commendations, had trusted him with the most sensitive assignments, had even attended his wedding last year. The idea that she had been working against the royal family all this time was almost incomprehensible. How long has she been feeding them information? James wondered aloud. "That's something we can investigate after we get Prince Louis to safety," Blackwood replied pragmatically. "Right now, we know we can't trust her, which means we can't trust the official royal protection protocols. But if Chen is involved, she'll know when I don't follow through on Protocol 7. She'll realize that I know about the conspiracy, which means we need to move fast. Once she figures out that her cover is blown, she might try to accelerate the timeline even further." James looked at his watch. It was already 3 p.m. The time mentioned in the original text message for a meeting at Hyde Park. He wondered if that meeting was still supposed to happen, and if so, who would be there waiting. "I think we need to consider going to that meeting," he said to Blackwood. "Someone has been trying to help us, and we might need all the allies we can get. It could be a trap." At this point, everything could be a trap. But sitting here waiting isn't going to solve anything. As they debated their next move, Prince Louis knocked on the door of the monitoring room. "Mr. Mitchell?" "I'm getting worried. Has something happened to my parents?" The innocent question broke James's heart. Here was a child who should be thinking about homework and playground games, instead wondering if his family was in danger. James opened the door and knelt down to Louis's level. "Your parents are perfectly fine, Your Highness. We're just taking some extra care to make sure you stay safe too." "Is someone trying to hurt me?" Louis asked with the directness that only children possess. James hesitated. His training said never to alarm a protected individual unnecessarily, but his instincts told him that Louis was smart enough to sense that something serious was happening, and that lying to him might actually make him less safe. Some people might want to cause trouble, James said carefully. But that's why I'm here, and that's why we have all these security measures. My job is to make sure nothing bad happens to you. Louis nodded solemnly. Like a knight protecting a prince in the stories? Exactly like that. Will you promise me something, Mr. Fake? Mitchell? Of course, Your Highness. Promise me that if something scary happens, you'll tell me what I need to do to stay safe. I'm not a baby, and I want to help protect myself too. James felt a surge of respect for the young prince. Despite being only 8 years old, Louis had the kind of courage and practical thinking that would serve him well in the dangerous situation they were facing. I promise, James said solemnly. As they prepared to leave the school and head to the mysterious meeting in Hyde Park, James realized that this promise might be the most important one he would ever make. The next few hours would determine whether Prince Louis lived or died, and James was going to make sure that the boy was prepared for whatever came next. The conspiracy that had seemed so complex that morning was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming deadlier. With Chen exposed as a mole and the mysterious ally requesting a meeting, James knew they were entering the most dangerous phase of what had started as a routine Tuesday morning. Getting Prince Louis out of Lambrook School without alerting Detective Chief Inspector Chen or the other potentially compromised members of the Royal Protection Unit required careful planning and perfect timing. James and Agent Blackwood decided to use the school's service entrance, which connected to the kitchen delivery area and would be less visible to any surveillance that might be monitoring the main exits. I need to contact my backup team, Blackwood said, working with her encrypted device. We can't do this completely alone. Are you sure they can be trusted? James asked, his paranoia now extending to everyone he didn't personally know. As sure as I can be about anyone right now. They're MI5 agents who have been working this case independently of any Royal Protection Unit personnel. While Blackwood coordinated with her team, James prepared Prince Louis for what was going to be an unusual afternoon. The boy had been remarkably calm about the changes to his routine, but James could see the underlying nervousness in his eyes.
Your Highness, we're going to take a different route home today, James explained.
It's going to be like an adventure, but I need you to stay very close to me and do exactly what I tell you when I tell you. Can you do that?
Louis nodded seriously. Like a secret mission?
Exactly like a secret mission.
At 2:45 p.m., they made their move.
Blackwood had arranged for an unmarked MI5 vehicle to be waiting at the service entrance, driven by Agent David Parker, a 15-year veteran of MI5 operations. As they slipped out of the school building, James kept his eyes on the surrounding area, looking for any sign that their movement had been detected. The drive to Hyde Park took 20 minutes through London traffic that seemed unusually heavy for a Tuesday afternoon. James found himself analyzing every vehicle around them, every pedestrian on the sidewalks, every person who seemed to be paying too much attention to their car. Prince Louis sat quietly in the back seat, looking out the window with interest rather than fear. James marveled at the boy's resilience and wondered if royal children were somehow trained from an early age to handle unusual circumstances with grace. Mr. Mitchell, Louis said quietly, my father told me once that sometimes adults have to make very difficult decisions to keep people safe. Is that what you're doing today? The question caught James off guard with its maturity. Yes, Your Highness. Sometimes that's exactly what we have to do. Will my parents be worried when they find out I'm not at school? James realized he hadn't yet figured out how to handle the communications with Prince William and Catherine. They would expect their son to be transported home through normal channels, and when that didn't happen, they would likely panic. Agent Blackwood, we need to notify the Prince and Princess of Wales about what's happening, James said. Already handled, she replied. My supervisors are briefing them directly through secure channels. They know that Prince Louis is safe, but that there's been a credible threat that required us to deviate from normal protocols. James felt relieved. At least Louis's parents wouldn't be left wondering where their child was or whether he was in danger. They arrived at Hyde Park and parked near the designated meeting spot, an ancient oak tree that stood in a relatively secluded area of the park. Agent Parker remained with the vehicle while James, Blackwood, and Prince Louis walked toward the tree. The person waiting for them was not what James had expected. Instead of another security professional or government agent, they found a woman in her 60s, well-dressed but unremarkable, sitting on a bench reading a newspaper. Mrs. Margaret Walsh, she said, standing and approaching them carefully. I've been waiting for you. Who are you? James asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. I work for Buckingham Palace, she replied. Have for 37 years. I'm in the communications office, which gives me access to a lot of information that passes through royal channels. James studied her face, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. She had the bearing of someone who had spent decades in service to the royal family, and her knowledge of internal procedures seemed genuine. You wrote the note? James asked. I did, and I sent you the text messages. When I discovered what was being planned, I knew I had to find a way to warn someone who would take it seriously. What exactly did you discover? Agent Blackwood asked. Mrs. Walsh looked around nervously before continuing. I've been monitoring communications for irregularities as part of my job. 3 weeks ago, I noticed that someone was accessing royal family scheduling information who shouldn't have had that clearance level. When I investigated further, I discovered that Detective Chief Inspector Chen had been copying sensitive schedule data and routing it to external contacts. The confirmation of Chen's betrayal hit James like a physical blow. Hearing it from an independent source made it feel final and devastating. But it goes deeper than just Chen. Mrs. Walsh continued. The external contacts she's been communicating with have connections to several foreign intelligence services. This isn't just about harming Prince Louis, it's about creating a crisis that could destabilize the entire royal family. Prince Louis, who had been listening to this conversation with wide eyes, tugged on James's sleeve. Mr. Mitchell, are these people talking about me? James knelt down to the boy's level. Yes, Your Highness, some bad people wanted to hurt you, but we're making sure that doesn't happen. Why would anyone want to hurt me? I'm just a kid. The innocence of the question broke James's heart. Sometimes bad people do things that don't make sense. But there are more good people than bad people, and the good people are going to keep you safe. Mrs. Bryan. Walsh reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick envelope. This contains copies of all the communications I intercepted, along with financial records that showed payments being made to several individuals within the Royal Protection Unit. James took the envelope with trembling hands. Several individuals? You mean Chen isn't the only one?
I'm afraid not.
There appear to be at least 3 people within your unit who have been compromised. Chen is the coordinator, but she's had help from driver Robert Davies and security coordinator Williams. The news kept getting worse. James realized that nearly everyone he had trusted with Prince Louis's safety over the years had been working against the royal family. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. How did you figure out that I wasn't involved? James asked. Process of elimination mostly. You're the only member of the protection unit who hasn't accessed any information outside your normal clearance level. And you're the only one who hasn't received any unexplained financial deposits over the past 6 months. Agent Blackwood was reviewing the documents from the envelope. This is incredible intelligence. With this information, we can not only protect Prince Louis, but we can roll up the entire conspiracy. But first, Mrs. Walsh said urgently, you need to know that they've moved up their timeline again. The original plan was to wait until tonight, but when they realized that their security had been compromised this morning, they decided to act immediately. James felt his blood run cold. What do you mean immediately? They're planning to intercept Prince Louis during transport back to Kensington Palace this evening, but if they can't do that, they have a backup plan to stage an incident at the palace itself. An incident at the palace? James repeated. A gas leak in the residential quarters that would require emergency evacuation. During the confusion of the evacuation, Prince Louis would disappear. It would be made to look like he was accidentally separated from his security detail during the chaos. The diabolical nature of the plan was breathtaking. The conspirators had thought of everything, including backup scenarios in case their primary plan failed. Prince Louis was looking increasingly frightened as he listened to the adults discuss various ways that people were trying to harm him. James realized that the boy needed reassurance, even in the middle of this crisis. Your Highness, James said gently, I want you to know that none of these bad things are going to happen to you. We know about all their plans now, which means we can stop them. But what if they think of new plans? Louis asked, with the logical thinking of a child. Then we'll stop those too. That's what good people do. They protect children from bad people. Mrs. Walsh checked her watch nervously. You need to get Prince Louis somewhere completely secure, somewhere that none of the compromised personnel know about, and you need to do it before Chen realizes that he's not following Protocol 7. Where do you suggest? Agent Blackwood asked. There's a safe house that MI6 maintains in London for exactly this type of situation. It's not connected to any royal protection protocols, so the mole won't know about it. James felt a moment of hesitation. Moving Prince Louis to a location completely outside the royal protection system went against everything in his training. but his training had been based on the assumption that the people within that system could be trusted. "I'll need to verify this safe house with my superiors," Agent Blackwood said, already working with her encrypted device. While she made her call, Mrs. Walsh pulled James aside. "There's something else you need to know. The payments to the conspirators didn't come from foreign intelligence services directly. They came from a private individual, someone with personal reasons for wanting to harm the royal family." "Who?" "I don't know yet. The financial trail is complex and deliberately obscured, but whoever it is, they have substantial resources and a very personal motivation for wanting to cause chaos within the royal family." James looked at Prince Louis, who was picking wildflowers near the oak tree, trying to distract himself from the frightening conversation the adults were having. The idea that someone with a personal grudge was willing to harm an innocent child for revenge was almost too horrible to comprehend. "The safe house is confirmed," Agent Blackwood announced, finishing her call. "MI6 is sending a clean team to secure the location, and they're coordinating with palace security to manage the situation without involving any of the compromised personnel." As they prepared to leave Hyde Park, James realized that they had just crossed a line from which there would be no going back. They were now operating completely outside normal royal protection protocols, trusting their lives and Prince Louis's safety to intelligence agencies and procedures that existed in the shadows. The most disturbing part was that this was probably just the beginning. If the conspiracy was as extensive as Mrs. W. Walsh suggested, there would be more revelations, more betrayals, and more dangers that they hadn't yet discovered. But, looking at Prince Louis, who was showing James the bouquet of wild flowers he had picked, James knew that whatever came next, he would do everything in his power to make sure this child made it safely through the nightmare that others had created around him. The MI6 safe house was located in an unremarkable residential area of South London, disguised as an ordinary townhouse that had been carefully modified with advanced security features. As they arrived, James was impressed by how normal everything looked from the outside. Exactly the kind of hiding place that would be invisible to anyone searching for Prince Louis. Agent Rebecca Morrison, the MI6 operative in charge of the safe house, met them at the door. She was a woman in her early 40s, with the calm, professional demeanor of someone who had spent years dealing with high-stakes situations. "Prince Louis," she said with a warm smile, "I'm Rebecca. I've prepared a special room for you with some games and books. Would you like to see it?" Louis looked up at James questioningly. Even in this frightening situation, he was remembering the proper protocol of not going anywhere without his protection officer's approval. "It's all right, Your Highness," James said. "Miss Rebecca is here to help keep you safe." As Morrison showed Prince Louis to his temporary room, James and Agent Blackwood reviewed the intelligence they had gathered. The scope of the conspiracy was becoming clearer, but so was the danger. Mrs. Walsh's documents revealed not just the identities of the conspirators within the Royal Protection Unit, but also hints about their ultimate objective. "Look at this," Blackwood said, pointing to a series of intercepted communications. "They're not just planning to harm Prince Louis. They want to create a crisis that will destabilize the entire line of succession." James studied the documents, his anger growing with each revelation. The conspiracy involved not just the immediate threat to Prince Louis, but a larger plot to create chaos and uncertainty around the royal family's future. Morrison returned from settling Prince Louis and joined their discussion. "My team has been monitoring communications from the compromised personnel. Detective Chief Inspector Chen has been trying to reach you for the past hour, James. She's getting increasingly agitated that you haven't responded to her calls about implementing Protocol 7. How long before she realizes that we're not following her orders?" James asked. "Not long. She's already sent Driver Davies to Lambrook School to check on the situation. When he discovers that Prince Louis isn't there, they'll know their plan has been compromised." The implications were clear. They were running out of time before the conspirators realized they needed to activate their backup plans. James's secure phone buzzed with yet another call from Chen. This time, he decided to answer it. "Mitchell, where are you?" Chen's voice was sharp with barely controlled frustration. "You were supposed to implement Protocol 7 an hour ago." "We've encountered some complications, ma'am," James replied carefully. "Prince Louis needed medical attention, and we had to deviate from the planned route."
Medical attention?
"What kind of medical attention? Why wasn't I notified immediately?" James could hear the suspicion in her voice. "Don't do, please." Chen was smart enough to know that something wasn't adding up, but she couldn't yet be sure how much James knew about her betrayal. "Nothing serious, ma'am. Just a precautionary visit to the school nurse. We should be back on schedule within the hour." "I want you to report directly to Kensington Palace immediately," Chen ordered. Bring Prince Louis straight here. No more deviations from protocol. After James hung up, Morrison looked grim. She knows. That wasn't the voice of someone who believes your cover story. Which means they're probably already moving to activate their backup plan, Blackwood added. As if summoned by their conversation, Morrison's encrypted communication device alerted her to an urgent message. After reading it, her expression became very serious. There's been an incident at Kensington Palace, she announced. A suspected gas leak in the residential quarters. Emergency services are responding, and there's talk of evacuating the royal family. James felt his stomach drop. The backup plan, they're doing it. But Prince Louis isn't there, Blackwood pointed out. So what are they really trying to accomplish? Morrison was already coordinating with her team through her device. Intelligence suggests that the gas leak is artificial. They're using it as cover to plant surveillance equipment and possibly weapons throughout the royal residences. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. The conspirators were using the threat to Prince Louis as a distraction while they compromised the security of the entire royal family's living space. We need to stop them, James said. But Morrison shook her head. That's being handled by other teams. Our job is to keep Prince Louis safe while this gets sorted out. How long will that take? Could be hours, could be days. These kinds of operations don't follow normal timelines. James looked toward the room where Prince Louis was staying, thinking about the boy's question earlier about whether his parents would be worried. With the emergency at Kensington Palace, Prince William and Catherine were probably frantic with concern about their son's safety. We need to arrange secure communication between Prince Louis and his parents, James said. He needs to know they're safe, and they need to know he's safe.
Morrison nodded.
I can set up an encrypted video call. It won't be traceable back to this location. While Morrison worked on establishing the secure communication link, Agent Blackwood continued analyzing the intelligence documents. James, look at this. There's a reference here to Phase 2 of the operation. What's Phase 2? I'm not sure, but it mentions something about permanent removal of the target and elimination of witnesses. The meaning was chillingly clear. Even if they successfully protected Prince Louis from the immediate threat, the conspirators had longer-term plans that involved murder. They're planning to kill anyone who can expose them, James realized. That includes us. It also includes Mrs. Walsh and anyone else who has been helping us. James felt a surge of protective anger. Mrs. Walsh had risked her own safety to expose this conspiracy, and now she was a target because of her courage. We need to get her into protective custody, James said. Already arranged, Morrison replied. She's being moved to a secure location as we speak. The secure video call with Prince Louis's parents was established in the early evening.
James watched as the boy's face lit up when he saw Prince William and Catherine on the screen, and he felt his heart break a little at the obvious relief in their voices when they confirmed that their son was safe.
Mama, Papa, I'm having an adventure, Louis told his parents with the resilience that seemed to be natural to him. Mr. Mitchell is protecting me like a knight. Prince William's eyes found James through the video connection. Thank you, he said simply. But James could see the depth of gratitude and trust in those two words. After the call ended, Louis seemed much more relaxed and settled into the safe house routine. But James knew that the night was far from over. Morrison's team was monitoring multiple communication channels, and the reports they were receiving painted a picture of a conspiracy that was unraveling rapidly, but dangerously. They found the surveillance equipment at Kensington Palace, Morrison reported around midnight. But they've also discovered that there are more conspirators than we initially thought. It appears that this operation has connections to several different groups, both domestic and foreign. Foreign? James asked. The individual funding this operation has been identified. It's someone with historical grievances against the royal family and substantial international connections. Who? Morrison hesitated before responding. Someone who was stripped of a royal title decades ago and has been harboring resentment ever since. They've been using their wealth and international connections to build a network of people willing to harm the current royal family. The revelation added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. This wasn't just about money or politics. It was about personal revenge that had been planned and nurtured for decades. As the night progressed, James found himself thinking about the choices he had made that day. He had gone against his training, ignored direct orders from his superior, and trusted people he had just met with the life of a child he was sworn to protect. But looking at Prince Louis, who was sleeping peacefully in the secure room, James knew he had made the right decisions. Sometimes protecting someone meant breaking the rules that were supposed to protect them. Around 3 a.m., Morrison received the news they had been waiting for. "It's over," she announced. Detective Chief Inspector Chen, Driver Davies, and Security Coordinator Williams have been arrested. The individual funding the operation has been taken into custody by international authorities. The immediate threat to Prince Louis has been neutralized. James felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by exhaustion. The adrenaline that had been sustaining him for the past 18 hours was finally beginning to fade. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now Prince Louis goes home," Morrison replied, "and you go back to doing your job, knowing that the people around you can be trusted again." "Will there be an investigation into how this happened?" "Extensive investigations. The security protocols for the entire royal family are going to be reviewed and updated. This kind of betrayal from within can't be allowed to happen again." As dawn broke over London, James helped prepare Prince Louis for his return to his family. The boy seemed to understand that the adventure was over and that he would be going back to his normal life. "Mr. Mitchell," Louis said as they prepared to leave the safe house, "would you still be my protection officer?" "If your parents want me to be, and if my supervisors approve, then yes, Your Highness. I would be honored to continue protecting you." "Good. Because I think you're the bravest knight I've ever met." The simple statement from an 8-year-old boy meant more to James than any commendation or recognition he had ever received. He had done his job, not just the job as it was written in the manual, but the job as it should be done, protecting an innocent child from those who would harm him, regardless of the personal cost. As they drove through the early morning London streets towards Kensington Palace, James realized that this experience had changed him forever. He had learned that trust was something that had to be earned continuously, that loyalty could be bought and sold, and that sometimes the greatest threats came from those closest to you. But he had also learned that there were people like Agent Blackwood, Mrs. Walsh, and Agent Morrison who were willing to risk everything to do what was right. And he had learned that sometimes an 8-year-old boy could show more courage and grace under pressure than adults who had trained for years to handle crisis situations. The conspiracy that had threatened Prince Louis was over, but James knew that his vigilance could never end. The safety of the royal family would always depend on people who were willing to question, to investigate, and to act when something didn't feel right. As they pulled through the gates of Kensington Palace, where Prince William and Catherine were waiting to reunite with their son, James made a silent promise. He would never again assume that the system designed to protect the royal family was perfect or unbreachable. He would always be watching, always be questioning, and always be ready to make the hard decisions that protecting innocent lives sometimes required. The events of that October Tuesday had started with a simple note pressed against a car window. They had ended with the exposure of a conspiracy that reached deep into the heart of royal security and extended across international borders. But most importantly, they had ended with Prince Louis safe in his parents' arms, ready to continue growing up as a normal little boy who just happened to be a prince. Sometimes, James reflected, that's all that really mattered, making sure that children got to be children, regardless of who was trying to hurt them or why. Everything else was just details.